Hello and welcome to Bouncy Theater, bouncing our way across Iowa on another adventure. My name is Randy Pischel, also known as Star Thinker, here on the Valentine Goose Channel. Woo! Okay, we're all set to go. Someone brought something up the other night, and it just brought back some memories. So I thought that's what I would do today to help keep myself awake on this long drive. It's like a 4-hour drive, and I'm tired and everything else. But yeah, I was going to talk about my grandpa, because like I said, someone brought something up and this reminded me of it. He was quite a colorful character. He was the mayor, the fire chief, the county boss. He had a speakeasy during Prohibition. Yes, he's that old. Remember that my dad had me like in his 60s, so it's I'm a weird. My dad was really old when I was born. So anyway, yeah, he had a speakeasy. He was kind of the county officer. Nothing happened in that county without him knowing it or getting a cut, if it was something illegal. And yeah, he was really colorful, but he did a lot of good things too. He always dressed up as Santa Claus on Christmas. And it's funny because he would go downtown. They would have the Santa Claus in the city hall, and you could go there, and there was a big Christmas tree full of socks, and that's what you got. You'd go sit in Santa's lap, you tell him what you want, and then you went to the tree and picked out a pair of socks, which is the weirdest thing. So anyway, that was in the 70s, and he passed away. And then a year later, on the same exact day, my grandmother passed away. So there was some synchronicity there. And but when he passed away, this was like one of my first funerals I'd ever gone to. I was about 14, 15 years old. And one thing, I walked in, I didn't know what to expect, but what I didn't expect and was really surprised by was that Grandpa was covered in gold and jewelry and gemstones, and like he had this big thing around his neck that went all the way down, and it was just all glittery gold, and he had a ring on every single finger and both his thumbs, and he had like a crown on, and I was like, what the heck, and I had no idea, but I was old enough, and I was smart enough to see that this was all Masonic jewelry, and it had all the symbols of the Masons on it. Man, I've seen so many people pulled over on this thing, and I'm going to speed limit, so I'm not worried. But yeah, just tons of it. And there was these two guys, and they had like the sashes and black suits and stuff, and they were hanging around the funeral. They were like in all four corners of the funeral, and they were there everywhere. And when this was at the funeral home, and then they take the casket out to the cemetery, and there's a chapel in the cemetery, and they took the casket into the chapel, and these guys, and I swear it's not like Ku Klux Klan, these are black robes pulled up over their heads. They look like stereotypical monks, you could see they had rings on their fingers, but that was it. And but like you couldn't see their faces or anything, and they were waiting when we got there. And I was like, what's going on? My mom's like, stay over here, dear. And I'm like, to heck with that. And I went over and I looked in the window of the chapel, and they were doing a ceremony around him. And it was quite an elaborate ceremony. When they took their robes off, I mean, they had just as much jewelry on as Grandpa, and they reopened the casket, and I remember thinking, like, wow, I thought that, once they sealed the casket, that was it. But they reopened it, and like all this stuff, and it was just pretty wild. So going home that night, well, no, I think it was a year later when Grandma died, because we were going through the house, and I found these books, and at that point I figured, Grandpa was a Mason, and that's a Masonic funeral. But what I didn't realize was he was one of the highest level Masons. He was like a 32nd, and I'm not sure which rite they were, but he was at one of the highest levels, and he basically ran the lodge and everything. And this all came out talking to my dad. My dad was like, yeah, I was in the Masons for a little bit. I didn't like it, didn't care for it. I'm like, wow, I should have been in the Masons. But yeah, I'm not a Mason. I think that's what came up when someone asked if I was a Mason. But one of the things we found, well, first of all, one of the things we found in the house was this big box of trophies. And I'm like, what? They were all bowling trophies. And as I'm pulling them out, they're like 300 games. You get like a little medal for the 300 games, 900 series, 300 game, 900 series, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I never knew my grandpa was like a pro bowler. He had so many trophies. And then next to the box was his bowling ball, so I like snagged that. And I'm like, oh, that's my bowling ball, and I still use it to this day. So that bowling ball is like 70 years old, and I still take to the bowling alley and bowl with it. But one of the things I found was this couple of books, and I opened the books up, and they were in code, and I was like, ooh, code books. So I snagged those two, and it wasn't until a while later I was flipping through them. I'm like, well, how am I going to break this code? And I realized that the first chapter was written in English. So I read the first chapter, and it's like rights. These are like beginning rights for someone just joining the lodge, and how you have to swear allegiance and all this stuff. And then like the next chapter was, I'm only talking about a couple of pages a chapter, but the next one was like 10% code and 90% English. The next chapter had even more code, and the next till every chapter was all code. And I realized if you read this book from the beginning, it teaches you how to read the code, and I thought that was so cool. And then the other books were in code, but they were like for higher levels. They were like the books that you're not supposed to see if you're a lower level Mason. But I still got those books. They're really interesting. They're leather bound. One is like really beat up and held together with rubber bands, and the other ones are kind of nice. And I've just always kept them. And yeah, Grandpa was a Mason, and he's got the Mason symbol on his tombstone. I think they paid for it even. But yeah, someone brought that up, and no, I'm not a Mason. Yes, I am aware of codes in Masonic temples, and yeah, cleaning up Grandpa's house was a trip, man. Because like I said, he was a mobster, and I found this box of stuff, and my dad was like, "You need to throw that out." And I'm like, "No, this is really cool stuff." So I kind of snuck it. He made me throw it out by snuck it in the car, and it's like contraband. It's stuff that's illegal to own. I can't sell it because it's illegal to own, and I can't like show it because it's illegal to own. But yeah, it's kind of fun, and sometimes I get it out, and I'm like, "Wow, man, this is really tough stuff." And I just imagine what it was like living back then. But anyway, that answers that question, and I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to stay awake. On my way to Omaha, I'll say Omaha. This isn't a trip for any good purpose. My friend and I are poking our nose into a cold case. Just to see what we can dig out, and I figure, hey, that's kind of an adventure. We're going to go to Omaha, and then I don't know if we're going to have time to come back through Des Moines, or if we're just going to go to Des Moines. I'm not sure. It's kind of late in the day to do all this traveling. But yeah, and I did finally watch Kyle Lazar's Beacon Star Thursday, and I watched a secret recording of the Zoom meeting, and I really don't have anything to say about that because I don't want to give out any clues or anything. But I will say somebody, there's like misinformation, and I wanted to go, oh no, it's misinformation. So I don't even know if I want to clear anything up. But one thing I will clear up was someone said, oh, you don't have to walk on grass. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I don't recall saying that. I might have said you don't have to walk on much grass. But yeah, there's some areas where you have to walk on grass. I'm not saying you have to go through a forest with bristles and bushes up to your navels. Yeah, there's places where you gotta walk on grass. I mean, it's kind of obvious. There's some of the puzzles have been solved, and they very obviously go on grass. And I'm not sure if I said that or implied that, but yeah, I don't recall saying you don't have to walk on grass. And there's places where you don't have to walk on grass, but you can. Anyway, that was just one of the things. There were some other things where I'm like, oh, that's not right. But no, I'm not going to correct it. I mean, my whole point of this hunt was to never get involved. I wanted to print the book and forget about it for like 30 years and then come back and see if anyone solved it. But then I got pulled into Forrest Fenn and all this stuff. And, yeah. And I wish people would quit coming down on Cynthia Meacham. I think, you know, she's doing a documentary and she was posting some pictures for fun. And then, she picked up the beads and stuff out there, which I don't have anything against that. You know, you're not supposed to leave stuff like that in the forest. It could choke birds. It could, you know, an animal could try to eat it. Something can get tangled up in it. And that's the far-fetched stuff. But the other thing is that, yeah, it's like graffiti. It's litter. It's, you know, maybe it's pretty litter, but it's still just the same. If I'm hiking through the woods, I don't want to see a shrine to somebody. It's bad when you hike in the Rocky Mountains. For some reason, I always come across graves, and you know, they go back to the 1800s and stuff. And you know, it's like, yeah, there's stuff in the woods, and you're gonna run across stuff, and even if it's just a hump in the ground with a big cross on the end of it. But yeah, it's something like this where you're just paying tribute to someone, and I mean, I'm pretty sure Forrest didn't want that. And obviously, Jack didn't want that because he refuses to say where it is. But I've seen some compelling pictures and stuff, and I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever come out. But like I said, this is the same road I was on when I made the comparison to the crash. What was it? What's his name that crashed? I want to say Billy something. Billy Howlett? Why can't I remember the guy's name? Anyway, the big crash. Buddy Holly. But I don't know why I couldn't remember that. So Buddy Holly, yeah, I live just a few miles from the crash site. And that's never been an issue. Yes, there's a little shrine out there, but that's because it's on private land. And the guy actually put like a plaque out there. And people do leave things, but it changes. Someone picks it up, just like they do, and just like Cynthia did. So, but the ground isn't trampled. The area is not trampled. It's not destroyed. There's not litter. There's not graffiti. So yeah, and that's been, I can't remember when that was. Like February of. All I remember was it was in February. But yeah, it's been a couple decades and several decades, and it hasn't done anything out there. So anyway, yeah, I think it was in the video that someone said, "Hey, is he a Mason? Because this is Masonic." I'm like, I don't think it's Masonic, but you know. The only thing I have left in my notes is I am going to Denver in August. I don't know if I'll have this car, but I probably will. I did take some of the decals off, and so it's not as... The only thing that's recognizable is I have lights on my fender. People are always asking me, what are those lights on your fender? And I'm like, they're like little LEDs that are just mounted in the fender, and I give a different story every time. And I still got like things hanging and stuff, so I'm sure if someone was close enough, they would know this was me. But yeah, going to Denver in August. And the only reason I'm waiting till August is because the place I want to camp doesn't open until August. So I'm going to go to Denver, and then I'm going to go camp and try to... the whole purpose of my location that I picked is to watch for UFOs. And look for crystals. But I always look for crystals. So... that's about it. Any other news? Yeah, it was really interesting to watch people talk about the book, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that one. Yep, I remember that one. Yep, I remember going there. And there's still a couple things that people think they've solved, but they're completely off. There's still a couple things that haven't been found yet. There's still a couple things people are working on, but from what I've seen, they're not getting anywhere. One of the things about the Zoom meeting is that it was like all over the place. There was no concentration on one thing. It was like, hey, what about this? And then they talk about that for 2 seconds. And, oh, what about this? They talk about that for 2 seconds. And I'm like, hey, as long as they're doing that, I don't think they're going to get very far. No offense, because some people crack some codes I thought would take longer. But some people, like, they're using methods I would use, like, oh, if I count this is a certain number, and that could be indicative of a certain code. And that's the way you do it. Sin City. Why am I seeing a sign? Oh, Sac City. I gotta get my eyes checked. And speaking of eyes checked, I'm losing a tooth, which is driving me crazy. My engine light is on. I had a flat tire the other day. But yeah, it's all for fun. So yeah, going for cold cases, and my friend found some similarities between some cold cases, and even though they were like really cold, like from the 70s and 80s, she wants to go check out the sites to see if anything jumps out. So that's going to be interesting. And it's weird because for the past 2 weeks I haven't seen a cloud. I swear to God, it's been the darkest, bluest skies I've ever seen. Hasn't been a cloud, and it wasn't supposed to be cloudy today. And I'm looking ahead, and the whole horizon is just dark, and I can see the front coming through, and there's clouds behind me. I'm like, wow, it's supposed to be 88 and sunny today, so I don't know what to expect. I just ran to the car wash, so I hope nothing comes of it. Anything else to report? Someone, and I only caught a glimpse of it, and I saw the name, but it wasn't a name I recognized. So someone tracked down where I got my token, and like I said, it's not pretty. It didn't come from a pretty place, but it's so solid, and it's going to last forever, and it'll never discolor, and the engraving will be good. And I just thought that was funny. I got one in my pocket right now. But yeah, now that that's out, I guess I don't need to worry about making token replicas to give out or sell or whatever. And I want to make a coin, because I have a great idea for a coin. So I might do that. Anything else? I can't think of anything. I just, like I said, my original intent was to just leave this book alone, let it do. People were supposed to figure out it was it had codes in it. People were supposed to figure out it was a treasure hunt. And I'm not supposed to give out clues, and it's just a whole different thing than what I thought it was going to be. And so yeah, and I still say I'll give out a major clue if I get 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, 10,000 is a good number, because that's when you get the plaque from YouTube. So get that, and I won't say which clue, but there's something a lot of people have been working on that they haven't cracked yet, and I don't know if I want to give clues to crack it or hints to crack it. But anyway, I'm going on my 20 minutes, and that's my limit. So I'm going to see you guys later. I'm going to start this uploading over 3G, and we'll see what happens there. So take care. Have a good day.